We were airborne for just a moment, and we were really up in the air. We were really up in the air.
Hello, and welcome to another video here on Maxwell's Virtual Aviation. Today we're going to talk about how we could implement prop synchronization into the H-4 using the 1947 flight cockpit. So, a very technical, possibly dry video, but I think it's really important because this is the understanding of the deeper effects of these technologies on our flight simulator model. So, what am I talking about? I am basically talking about propeller control. That's what this video is about. It's about controlling the RPM of the propellers. Now, it's it was started design in 39, 40-ish. One of the big things that the Hercules does, probably better than any other aircraft at this point in the war, is try to minimize the amount of work the crew actually has to do. Automation is a big deal in this aircraft, and as you start digging into the systems and the subsystems, the ability of a small crew to manage highly complex engines in a highly complex airframe is it's a big deal, and there's a lot going on behind the scenes. These are some technologies that this aircraft pioneered, which is why it deserves its place here on the Microsoft Flight Simulator platform, but also it needs to be better understood to the lengths that Howard Hughes attempted to use the cutting edge of technology to make the workload easier on the crew. And today, we're talking about propeller control. Now, traditionally, on a air-quoted constant speed propeller, you have the ability to manually change the pitch of the propellers to get maximum efficiency at a given RPM, right? At a given throttle setting, if you will. And it's no different in this aircraft. This aircraft is equipped with 8 Hamilton standard constant speed propellers, and you have the ability to change them. If you look at the cruise, the climb, it's all done, of course, as is traditional, manifold pressure and RPMs. But they differ, so you can change them. So, let us start with the basics, which is from the manual. Remember, we have a manual for this aircraft. It is post-flight, but it was prepared by Hughes Tool Company / Hughes Aviation and the War Department. This is official documentation. So, from that manual, we have 1-3.3 synchronizer control. The propeller pitch and engine RPMs are controlled by 3 type C4 Hamilton standard propeller synchronizers, mechanically linked to operate simultaneously. Constant synchronous speed of all 8 engines is maintained with a minimum of control. The pilot controls the engine RPM by means of a synchronizer lever located just to the right of the pilot's throttles on the control pedestal quadrant. The master engines, either number 2 or number 3, is selected by a control switch on the pilot pedestal directly below the prop synchronizer lever. Manual control of prop pitch is by means of the momentary switch to the right of the master engine selector switch. To the right of the momentary switch is a fixed prop RPM switch, which is a synchronizer override switch and will cause the propellers to go to the maximum or minimum RPM position. The flight engineer's position is equipped with individual momentary toggle switches for each engine to affect minor changes in engine RPM or to control the pitch manually. But what does that mean here on the 47 flight deck? Well, let's take a look over here real quick, and I want you just to take a look. Now, this has been, I've mentioned it in other videos, I've shown pictures. This is what the flight deck looked like on November 2nd, 1947, when the aircraft was flown. These 4 throttles are pneumatically driven. They caused some issues, and almost immediately after the flight, they were replaced with the 8 throttles you see today that are electrically controlled. All right? So that means that this entire panel got changed. And this entire panel here also got changed. But I want you to notice something. Notice this white lever right here. And these 4 right over here. It is my belief that in reading this documentation, and we'll go into it a little bit more, that this is your propeller synchronizer lever. There it is. Propeller synchronizer lever is right here. This is not necessarily a quote-unquote propeller control. It's a synchronizer control. So there is one synchronizer mechanically linked to all 8 engines. That one synchronizer controls the propeller pitch for all 8 engines, meaning you don't need individual levers in order to do so. All right. Now, what does that mean for this panel? Let's wander over to the engineers panel, and I'll show you exactly what it means. Here we are in view 6, the engineers upper panel. I want you to look to the left here, and you'll see this right here and this right here. Also, Synchronization Master number 4 and number 5. It is my belief that this would tell you which master engine, in this case 4 or 5, you would be controlling off of. And then this engine selector would probably have an 8 around it, and you could view on this oscilloscope, I'm guessing it's an oscilloscope, what the sync is like. And then if we look down here, here are your mom switches, your momentary switches. High and low. My guess is those are individual momentary switches that you can individually adjust the prop sync for every engine if you're out for some reason or another. So that is also mentioned in the documentation, right? And that's all that there is. The newer panel that's on the aircraft now has something that looks similar, but only momentary switches. Why? Because you have synchronizers. You don't need to be over here juggling 8 levers. You have synchronizers. Why else do I believe this lever is your synchronizer lever? Well, here's a switch right here, and here's a light. This is high, and this is low, right? These are the ability to override the synchronizer and set it in the highest or the lowest settings. At the highest and lowest setting, it is my guess these lights come on. These lights come on, right? And then, again, we're still looking at a later panel. The other reason I believe this is your synchronizer setting is that if we move over here, you will see this duplicated over on this side, right? Although this says throttle friction is actually right here. This is your prop sync lever. This controls the synchronizers across all 8 engines to set your RPMs. It's backed up by the documentation we have, an understanding of how the engine works. The fact of the matter is that they had a way to change the propeller pitch, and this is it right here. I don't know why it wasn't labeled the day of, but we have to remember this is a prototype, right? I say that in all of my technical videos. This is a prototype. We are not done yet. Now, where else can we look for clues? We can look for clues in the current cockpit. We can look for clues in the documentation. And we can look at other documentation of other aircraft as well that had a similar system. So here are your throttles. Here is your master synchronizer, which would set your RPM, meaning that only one person had the ability to set the synchronizer for all 8 engines. Again, the genius of H.R. Hughes right there. And this is cutting edge stuff. So, this lever, back and forth, controls our RPM across our entire range. This is an override, maximum or minimum. And then we have momentary switches on the panel here, which we can bump up and down the RPM in small increments. And that is how propeller synchronization was done on the H-4 Hercules. I hope you found this interesting. I find these details absolutely fascinating. I love digging into it with all of the best information that we have, trying to understand more of how this great aircraft was flown and how it operated. So, until next time,